Hey, what's going on? It is Rad. I am the host of SOFREP Radio, but you already know that because you probably clicked on the link that says, let's listen to Rad on SOFREP Radio with my guest, who I usually tease you with. But again, you can probably read it in the title that I've got this cool author guy right over here with me. However, before I introduce you his name, I like to tease you with what? Say it with me. The merch store, Rad. That's right. SOFREP.com/merch. Go check it out. Pick up some of the branded goods that we have from SOFREP. I really love the flashlight. Go check that out, and a lot of other things that we have. Thank you for buying and supporting SOFREP and being a part of our world. Also, the book club. So it is SOFREP.com/book-club. The Special Forces and Navy SEAL guys behind the scenes have curated this book club for someone like yourself. So feel free to check out the SOFREP.com/book club. Now, I have a lot of authors that come on the show. They request to be on the show. It's flattering to have them on the show. And this is no different. And today we have the author of New York Times bestselling books, Don Bentley, with us. Everybody raise your hands and smack them together. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Rad.
Hey, it's very nice for you to take the time out of your busy day. I know that you have a book coming out, and that book is called Capture or Kill. Vince Flynn. You're going to be doing this in honor of Vince Flynn, who was the original author, correct? Who passed away probably around 2013, maybe?
Yeah, right around 10 years ago or so, he unfortunately passed away from prostate cancer. So for a long time, the fans didn't know what was going to happen with the series. And luckily, the estate tapped Kyle Mills on the shoulder, and he has done a fantastic job for about the last 9 or 10 years, and now I get to fill Kyle's very, very big shoes.
It's like the Olympic torch getting passed, bro. Okay, you're now in time to run with that. So it's like, here you are, okay, and let's talk a little bit about you real quick. And first of all, sorry for the loss of Vince Flynn, but I just want to point out prostate cancer. So please, if you're a guy and you're really like hitting the 40s, you should go get that checked out. All right. Go talk to your doctor, and let's be advocates for that. He would want us to say that. I bet you anything. He'd be like, okay, cool. Take the time to use my name to go get yourself checked out. All right. Don't be embarrassed to go get looked at. I got it done at 40, the day after my 40th birthday. They said, aren't you too young to be in here to get a colonoscopy? I was like, well, I'm predisposed. My family history has had it. And they're like, oh, yeah, let's get you in then. And so they did. And 3.5 polyps later, now I'm 46, almost 47. And I had to go in and do the whole maybe poop in the cup thing. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping for, bro. I don't want to be probed again, man. Aliens, bro. Okay. So now that we have that out of the way, okay, I just want to put that out there. Let's be advocates for our own health and bettering ourselves. So Don, you went in to the military as a healthy person. You showed all those orifices to a doctor who said you're good to go, bro. And then were you enlisted or officer when you joined?
Yeah, so I went to The Ohio State University on a Army ROTC scholarship and was lucky enough to get branched aviation. And so I spent 10 years active duty as a Apache pilot, most of that in air cavalry units, including a tour in Afghanistan from 2005 to 2006 as an air cavalry troop commander. And then I got out and thought I was ready to enter the real world. And 3 years later, wasn't quite. My first day, it was a great company. I wasn't ready for it yet. And I came home from work my first day and told my wife, I am living that movie Office Space now. That is my life. I went from chasing bad guys across Afghanistan to sitting in a cubicle and wasn't quite ready to do that. And so fortunately, the FBI had something called the Tactical Recruiting Program where they were looking for folks with military experience. And so I came in under that and was a agent in the Dallas field office. I did primarily HUMINT stuff and then was also a SWAT guy, and then worked for a series of companies that made technology for the special operations or intelligence communities before I finally got to write full-time about 3 years ago. So my wife likes to say that I can't figure out what I want to be when I grow up, which is probably true, but I'm going to ride this writer gig for all it's worth.
100%, bro. And you should. And if you've got the skill set to put it on paper, I think that's what a lot of folks hit me up because I do get a lot of authors on the show, and the questions are in email. Hey, Rad, can you publish me? Or hey, Rad, where do I start? And I'm like, well, bro, I need to write my own book. Okay. But they feel that I have this, and I do have some acumen. And what it is a lot of writers have said, just start to get it out on paper, because you don't have a book. You don't have anything until you have it on paper.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of us, like I wrote 3 books over 17 years that didn't sell before I wrote my 4th that did sell in a 2-book deal. And it doesn't necessarily take you 17 years to write 3 books. There was a lot of sulking involved in there after each one didn't sell. You know, you got to feel sorry for yourself for a while. And so, but you definitely have to, what I tell folks is you got to write a lot and you got to read a lot. And so if you're writing a book, especially commercial fiction, it's no different than if you're a woodworker making a chest of drawers for somebody. You got to understand what that customer wants. And the way that you understand that as a writer is you got to read a lot, and specifically in the genre you're trying to write in. And so if you don't read a lot and you don't write a lot, you're going to have a hard time being a writer.
Oh, question. I have a question.
In the back.
Yes, me in the back. How did you get to be, a writer? Like, what was it that what?
Yeah, so I think I was always a storyteller. I'm a kid of the 80s, and they had some magnificent television back then, things like The A-Team and Airwolf and Knight Rider and DuckTales. I remember being a kid, watching The A-Team, and after you'd done it for a while, you'd think, okay, at the 15-minute mark, this is going to happen. At the 30-minute mark, this is going to happen. And then they're going to shoot a bunch of people, but nobody's going to get hurt. And so, I remember thinking about, what could they have done differently? How could that story have turned out differently? And so literally as a kid, I remember writing kind of what you'd call fan fiction now. And some of that was TV shows I love that I had ideas for. And so I started working on my first book maybe when I was in high school. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I had an incredible teacher my senior year of high school who, we had an assignment to write a short story or scene or something. And she pulled me aside afterwards and said, hey, I really think you have what it takes to do this. You could be a writer. And so I listened to that and went to the Ohio State University and majored in electrical engineering, as all good writers did. And so it took me a while kind of to get the tools in my toolbox that I needed to be able to tell the kind of stories I wanted. And that's partly why it took me 3 books to get published, but it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of reading about writing and how to do it better. I actually wrote my first 2 books while I was in the military. I wrote my second one while I was in Afghanistan. We'd come back from missions and everybody else would play Xbox or whatever, and I'd go back and hammer out part of a book on my laptop. And so kind of a combination of those things, both persistence and then developing the tools that you need in order to be a more effective writer and storyteller.
No, I love that. And that's very inspiring. When you went back in Afghanistan to go write on your laptop, do you feel that was a little bit of like of an outlet for you to be able to like kind of journal, but in a way that you're writing this book out, you're able to get some things off your chest? Yeah,
for sure. And I don't think I did that really well until the 4th book, the one that sold, that was called Without Sanction. That's the first book in my Matt Drake series. And I have a really good friend of mine. So Brad Taylor is a fantastic writer. He was a Delta Force troop commander and squadron commander, and now he writes the New York Times bestselling Pike Logan series. And I remember talking to Brad about it and him giving me the advice that in order to write commercial fiction, you have to do something that's the same but different, meaning the bookseller has to know that, okay, Don's book hopefully belongs on the shelf next to Brad's book, but I'm never going to write a better Brad book than Brad can. And so part of that for me was trying to decide with my 4th book, again, knowing what writers were already doing, what could I do that was a little different? And part of what I did different, my protagonist in my Matt Drake series is a guy who is a former Army Ranger and a current DIA case officer. And so that's kind of just slang for saying he's a spy. He basically does the same thing for the DIA that a CIA case officer would do. And so I had some kind of ancillary experience with that. But what I really had, like a lot of folks, I had a bad day in Afghanistan and had some baggage that I was dragging around with me since then and had never been brave enough to put into a book. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to write a fourth book and try something different, I'm going to make my protagonist struggle with the same kind of things that I have. And so when the book starts, that case officer is on a leave of absence from the DIA because of an operation that went tragically wrong in Syria, where he lost his asset and his asset's family, and he blames himself for what happened. And so a lot of that was me coming to terms kind of with my own bad day in Afghanistan and what that meant personally. And I think readers recognize veracity on the page, right? They might not know about the tactics and weapons and stuff, or maybe they do, but what they can resonate with is the emotional core of that book and say, you know, I've never been to Syria, I've never been to Afghanistan, I've never run an asset in ISIS, but I understand what this guy is struggling with. Like, I feel that at a visceral level. And I think when you can do that, it resonates with people, but it also means you got to be brave enough to put the stuff that scares you down on the page.
You got to be vulnerable is what you're saying. You opened yourself up, which is hard to do because, again, at the beginning of the show, we said, go take care of yourself and go get yourself checked out. It's like, you got to be vulnerable. You got to open up, and then you can grow from that, though. You can
100%. The hardest book I've ever written, the fourth book in my series, was called Forgotten War. And it took place during the fall of Afghanistan because as a veteran, I was watching Afghanistan crumble and getting all these text messages from friends or who were fellow veterans. And the kind of thread through all of it was it worth it? Was the 20 years of blood and tears and money and being away from their families, was any of that even worth it? And I didn't know how to answer that question. And so it kind of came out in my book. And so I think the best books are books in which the writer is trying to understand something for themselves in the pages of that book.
And you're right. And there are books out there. People have written on that topic, but you come at a different approach of, you know, how is that going to be? And I like that. That's a good way to do it, you know, because even in your book, there's a way to probably branch off of something else to write about in that specific, you know?
Absolutely. And I think with Forgotten War in particular, I tried really hard to make it apolitical because I don't consider myself, it's fiction. First of all, people get politics 24 hours a day. They don't want more of it in their books. And the second of is, I don't think I'm a spokesperson for all the veterans who ever served, but I could give people who hadn't served a window into some of the thinking of the folks who had and what their reactions were. You know, the amazing thing about the entire global war on terror is it was an all-volunteer army, and that all-volunteer military, rather, was less than 1/4% of the U.S. population. And so that means the average person doesn't know anybody who served in Afghanistan or Iraq. And so I thought, you know, I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I have these friends who could be characters in my books. And a lot of times they are. I tend to put my friends in my books. And I thought, you know, if I can, if I can give people a vantage point into the men and sometimes women who really do these things while you sleep safely in your bed, man, that's a fantastic thing I could do.
100%. You know, I've got friends that fly the Apache here in Utah. And, you know, I usually see them coming in as like a warrant officer, or they've turned in like a Waffet packet. And when I asked you earlier if you had gone in as an officer and then you kind of got in, so you went in and kind of got in as a lieutenant and climbed all the way to colonel maybe in 10 years, major lieutenant colonel.
That'd be a fast move. No, normally so I got out as a captain promotable, which just means that my name had come up on the list for major, but I got out before. And so usually from an officer perspective, you spend your first 10 years as lieutenant through captain, you pin on major about year 10, and then lieutenant colonel is something you get about year 16 or 17 through around 20 or so. So yeah, for aviation, it's a little bit different in that you only fly when you're in a platoon or when you're in a leadership position rather than a staff one. So you get to do your mission as a platoon leader, as a lieutenant. And then once you make captain, you go off into staff world, kind of purgatory for a couple years. And then you come back as a troop or company commander and you get to fly again and do the mission. And then you spend as a major about 6 years making PowerPoint slides before you maybe get to fly again as a lieutenant colonel, as a battalion or squadron commander. And I did not have it in me to spend another 6 years making PowerPoint slides. So little did I know I would go to that job where I was sitting in a cubicle and be making PowerPoint slides again. So maybe the joke was on me, but that's kind of how the aviation career works.
Now, there was a movie, a very historical document called Firebirds, okay?
Nicolas Cage.
I'm not even going there. No, I just wanted to say it. We don't even say it. No, it's
the Navy gets Tom Cruise and we get Nicolas Cage. That's
Tommy Lee Jones.
And Come on,
he's just trucking along, okay, along the fence line, okay, and they all, hey, what's up, Chief? What's up, Chief? He's like, I'm too old for this shit. Come on now, you're an 80s kid, grew up, you know those movies, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so was that something that, you're like, I'm going to put a pair of panties and a periscope on my head and drive a Jeep and get my optic down and all gone bye-bye?
So the funny thing about that is I remember watching it whenever I was maybe in middle school or high school when it came out. And there I was, every good flying story starts with no shit, there I was. And so there I was in flight school. And so in the Apache, you actually fly with your right eye. And so there's something called the helmet display unit that folds over your right eye, and it's connected to a sensor at the front of the aircraft, one of two, that sees in the infrared spectrum. And so wherever you move your head, the sensor moves. And so the movie made a joke about, well, if you're left eye dominant, it's really hard to fly out of your right eye. And this guy is left eye dominant. And so the way that worked is when you're flying, it's called the bag because you sit in the second seat of the helicopter, the rear seat, and they take garbage bags, very high tech garbage bags, and tape them all over the glass canopy so you can't see out. And it forces you to use that right eye to fly while your instructor pilot sits in the front seat during the daytime and keeps you from killing yourself. And so as you're trying to fly and you're sweating because you're working so hard, what invariably happens is you're coming in to make a landing, and there's a tiny pinhole in that garbage bag, and this shaft of light comes in and your left eye takes over. And so now instead of seeing the landing area, you're looking inside the cockpit and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I cover the eye? And so the bag is why the Apache, it's called the aircraft qualification course, the course to learn to fly it takes so long. And in fact, I actually had a progress ride during the bag and failed it and had to go back and get extra hours and stuff. And so once you learn how to fly that way, it's incredible because you can literally look through the cockpit floor, right? Because anywhere your head moves, the sensor moves and you can see. But it takes a long time to get used to flying out of your right eye and then using your left eye to look inside the cockpit and look at your instruments and such.
Does that affect your rifle qualification as well?
So it not rifle. It did when I was an FBI agent, especially as a SWAT guy. I had to learn because I'm right-handed and left eye dominant, and so what I had to learn how to do was when I brought the pistol up, is post it under my right eye so that my left eye wouldn't take over, right? Because obviously you want to have both your eyes open. When I'm shooting, it wasn't so much a problem, especially using like the reflex sights, because you could dial up the brightness enough that right eye is going to take over. But pistol is much, much harder to get good at. And if I post it directly in front, then I get into the thing like you're talking about where my left eye takes over, but I'm using my right hand. And so it, who knew
as
flying an Apache?
As an FBI agent, how many hours of trigger time do you have on your service weapon?
A lot, a fair amount as an agent. As a SWAT guy, a ton. So once you make SWAT, when I was still in the FBI, we had the Glock 23s, which is the smaller 40 millimeter. They've now switched to the 9 millimeter. And actually, it was funny because you used to be able to tell who failed firearms as an FBI agent. So in the academy, if you fail the final firearms, you get one more shot. And what they would do is pull you out and transition you from the 40 caliber to the 9 millimeter. And because the 9mm has less kick, it's got less report and stuff like that, right? So now everybody's gone to the 9mm, so you can't tell that anymore. But when you make SWAT, you have the option of transitioning to the Springfield 1911, the 45. And so you would go through this 2.5-day course where you would shoot something like 2,500 or 2,600 rounds in that 2 days. And so literally by the time you're done, your hands are blistered. You got, you shot so many rounds. And so still not obviously anything approaching what the tier 1 folks shoot. But as a SWAT guy, unless you're in a really big field office like the New York field office or the Washington field office, SWAT is an additional duty. And so what that means is usually 1 day a week would be a SWAT day. So that'd either be a training day or maybe a mission day or a range day. And I feel like we went to the range as SWAT probably at least once a month, if not twice a month. And you do a lot of shooting. And so I got infinitely better with a pistol and a rifle once I made the SWAT team.
Dang, bro. Now, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but let me ask you something since you have some experience here. Yeah. Do you have any opinion on what happened in Pennsylvania with the whole attempt on the former President Trump to, just from, if you do, you do. If you say no, then we'll just move on. But if you have any thoughts from SWAT team style?
Only from a very high level is that obviously it was a failure, and it was a failure in every sense of the word. So when you're a SWAT guy, one of your additional duties is personnel protection. And so you don't do it very often. What would happen is, like, if the FBI director came to town, you would augment the director's detail. Or I did work with Secret Service a couple times because Eric Holder came to town, and so we would augment their detail. And so my experience is very, very small, and certainly not anything to do with the site survey stuff, the communication between local law enforcement. But where it seems like, again, from me just sitting on the sidelines, where it seems like the huge breakdown occurred was the coordination between local law enforcement and the Secret Service. In that, apparently, and again, we're still waiting for the rest of the information to come out, that the critical information of there's a guy on that rooftop somehow didn't make it to Secret Service. And so when local law enforcement and federal agencies coordinate together well, it's a huge force multiplier. And so every SWAT operation we would do, the Dallas PD had officers that were embedded with the FBI. They're called task force officers, specifically so they could do the outer cordon if we're going to hit a target. Or we might use them to pull somebody over on a pretext, you violated a traffic signal. And so we worked and it was something that there was a habitual relationship, something that was fostered over a long period of time. And so when those two work together, it can go really good. Now, in Secret Service's defense, it's much harder to do that when you're in a different place every single day, and maybe you don't know the local law enforcement folks there or not. But I don't know. It was obviously a huge failure, and I kind of thought we would have known more about what has happened 30 days out than we do now. I've been really disappointed by that too. So hopefully we will, with the hearings in Congress or whatever, we'll get to the bottom of it sooner rather than later.
It just does seem, though, that both sides of Congress, to bring that up, and I really try to stay apolitical, seem to agree on the same thing here. Like, it was a failure. You have Jamie Raskins, who Democratic side, and you have other sides on the Republican, both agreeing, like, I agree with my colleague on the aisle.
And I think one of the things that frustrates me, I think, across government and government organizations is that as a leader in the military, especially as an officer, as a young lieutenant, you're taught that you are responsible for everything your platoon does and does not accomplish, which means regardless of what happened, regardless of knucklehead fell asleep, and that is still your responsibility. And with responsibility comes repercussions. And it seems like it is just rife throughout the senior leadership of a lot of these governmental agencies that it's really easy for them to say, I accept responsibility, but there are no repercussions for the failures that happen under that person's leadership. And as somebody that served in the military, I just can't wrap my head around that.
And what's outcome of that is the Secret Service director did submit her resignation after that deposition, I guess, in front of Congress, with Jamie Raskins and all them. She just said, well, this is what I have to do.
Under duress, she certainly did that. Right. It would have been a little more, because again, if that, whatever the military equivalent of that would have been, that commander would have been relieved, right? There would have been no question about it. You would have been relieved because you're responsible for everything the men and women under your command do or don't do, period.
Exactly. Like at my store, my employee may have done something and the person's upset, but at the end of the day, it comes to me that I have to resolve it or fix it or take it on my shoulders. Even at that level, let alone this high level of, bro, you're talking top secret security clearance that we don't even know exists, resigning.
Right.
Books are written about that kind of mind, like what's in there, it's like, holy cow. And so let's go back to talking about your book, Capture or Kill, right? So that's supposed to be something where you, if I understand, wrote it to be put into between a couple books that Vince Flynn had created already. You're like, let me kind of insert myself here. Right?
Yeah. So when Vince started writing, and he is my all-time favorite writer, and he was really the first of the post 9/11 writers that came up with this character whose job was to go hunt down terrorists and shoot them in the face. That's basically what Mitch Rapp does. And so when he started writing those books, he aged Mitch and had them reflect current events, right? So every time a new book came out, it was that time. And so he did that up until a book called Pursuit of Honor. And then he stopped and went back and wrote 2 prequels that were kind of telling Mitch Rapp's origin stories. And those were American Assassin and Kill Shot. And then he fast forwarded again and jumped in with what was unfortunately his last book before he passed away, that was called The Last Man. And so when I was looking at that and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Because again, I was lucky enough to write for another legacy series. I wrote some books, 4 books in the Tom Clancy universe too. So when you're coming to this, and that was amazing too. But when you're coming to this, what you want to do is give the readers what they expect, but also tell a new story, right? Again, going back to the kid in the 80s thing, I love the movie Top Gun. Still, like, my kids know all the time that when I say no, I say negative Ghost Rider. It's all the time things to that movie. And so I was super nervous when Top Gun Maverick came out because I'm like, am I going to watch this? And is it going to ruin everything I loved about the original movie? And to their credit, I think they did a great job of paying homage to that original movie, giving the nods to everything we loved, but still taking the story in a different direction, right? And growing those characters and giving you something new. And so that's what I really wanted to do with this Vince Flynn book. And so as I was looking at it and realized he had left that couple year gap in the books, I thought, what happened during those 3 years? And I started looking at them, and lo and behold, one of them was the Bin Laden raid. And so I thought, you know what? He never addressed the Bin Laden raid. And I remember like I said, I read a bunch of his books in Afghanistan because, you had the official libraries, and then people would just leave paperbacks at the gym or, everywhere else that you could just grab one and put one in. And I remember when, President Obama walked out and stood behind that podium and said, we just killed bin Laden. My first thought is, hell yeah, we just killed him. And then my second thought is, I wonder what Mitch Rapp had to do with that. And so I remember looking back and saying, did Vince ever address that? And so there were some questions fans had written on his website, and he kind of said, well, there was, a whole bunch of intelligence preparation of the battlefield that happened beforehand, and that was probably what Mitch was doing. And so when I dug into that, I'm like, you know what? There's a story here, and I could tell what did Mitch Rapp do to help with the Bin Laden raid. And so that's what Capture or Kill answers the question that Vince Flynn fans have been asking for the last 13 years, which is, what did Mitch Rapp have to do with the Bin Laden raid? So It was a ton of fun to write. When you dig into that, there was, there's been Zero Dark 30 and stuff like that too, but there's a bunch of really interesting things that CIA officers did in order to set the battlefield, to get that intelligence, to be able to set the conditions for the Navy SEALs that went in and punched his ticket. And so that's Capture or Kill.
that's so awesome because Mitch Rapp has to tell us for sure what's going on in the ground.
Yeah.
And in Pakistan, only one guy, Mitch Rapp. You know what I'm saying? I love it, dude. No, I do. I think it's so cool. And because we couldn't go in and just start causing conflict, heaven forbid we just go into a place. So we got to have for sure, that we know for sure, dude. I love it. Mitch
and
Rapp,
I think that's one of the amazing things about looking back. Like we look back at the Bin Laden raid or even D-Day and stuff with the benefit of knowing it succeeded. And so you can't really put yourself in the position of the men and women who had to make that call not knowing whether it would succeed, right? And even like President Biden is famous for saying that he told President Obama at the time when he was vice president, he's like, don't do it, right? Because you are risking starting a war with Pakistan. If it goes sideways, you're going to have 20-something Americans stuck in Pakistan. You could ignite a regional war if this goes sideways. And to his credit, President Obama authorized it, but I wanted to dive into that and show that a little and say, what were the stakes? What were the folks on the ground trying to do? How do we set the conditions for that? And that's what Capture or Kill is.
That's awesome. So has your book ever made it to the airport, or are you excited for that?
I had, that is kind of the pinnacle of being a writer. If you can see it at the airport, though it was a little bittersweet because the first book of mine I ever saw at the airport was a Tom Clancy book. And so now when I see him, I just walk up, sign him, and put him back and don't say anything. But at the time, I'm like, do I ask permission? And so I took it to the person behind the cash register and said, I wrote this book. Can I sign them? And she's like, yeah, just a minute. And she gets the little PA and she's like, Tom Clancy's in the store right now. And I'm like, no, just me.
All the Cleveland Browns fans come running. They're like, where? Oh, wait, no, the Hunt for Red October is just off my port bow. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I talk about what a cool genre to write in is Tom Clancy's world. My dad, being a Green Beret, I grew up around him reading all the Tom Clancy's, and what he liked about it was how detailed Tom Clancy was about like the switch that they flipped, and it's where it comes from or whatever the color of it, but when he watched Hunt for Red October, he was like, it was okay. He's like, it's all right. It's okay. You got a Scotsman playing a Russian commander. It's totally fine. I want to go to Montana. We love that movie. I love that movie. Love it. But he was like, it was okay. And I was like, why? He's like, well, the book is always better, Aaron. That's what he told me. He's like, the book will always be better in your mind. And he wanted to probably see the switches, engravings or whatever. But I love my dad. Always read all the books out loud. So I would probably fall asleep, but in different voices.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, all the time, awesome. Yeah, and as I grew up and was married with my wife, I told my little brothers, 12 years younger than me, my dad was doing that with Harry Potter. So he'd always be like, awesome. And then Dumbledore. And so I kind of get where I get a lot of what I got, from my dad. I had to put it out there. So a lot of voiceover work and animated attitude about acting and movies. So what about you? Do you have that in your life? Your father and your inspired you military wise, or who kind of put you in that direction?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to serve from a pretty young age. So I was the third generation. My grandfather served, actually both grandfathers served in World War II, one in the Army and one in the Marines. My father served in Vietnam, in the Vietnam conflict. Neither of them went to war. They were both stateside. But I like to say that I am the first one to serve voluntarily. The other two were drafted. And then, so I knew from an early age I wanted to serve. And then actually last weekend, my son, our oldest, just graduated from Texas A&M, and he made poor choices, so he was commissioned as a Marine Corps second lieutenant, which was
congratulations.
Really neat. Yeah, it was really neat. It was really neat.
Oh my gosh, Texas A&M. First of all, isn't that the Longhorns? Is that right?
Oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said that. So the Longhorns are actually University of Texas or Texas University. The A&M are the Aggies, and what they will tell you is that the University of Texas is actually just a Texas university. The Aggies consider themselves the actual University of Texas.
Of Texas.
And so, yeah. And it really is. It's an incredible place. Like it's
fight
kind
me.
of
Let's
all
go.
of Texas distilled. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go fight me. Let's go. Comment down below. Let's get into this. Come on. Tell me what's up. Rad, you don't know who Longhorns are? Well, let me tell you something. We have the Utah State Aggies up north. We have the USU Aggies. So you guys have your Aggies. We have our Aggies. Let's go. Now what?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
No, but congratulations to your Marine on his commission and to you, right? Spreading that seed, bro.
Yeah. It was really, really neat. They, so he was a member of the Corps. So Texas A&M was originally a military college and now, still has a Corps cadets. I think it's probably 3,000 or 4,000 folks. And so he wanted to do, a private commissioning ceremony beforehand, for friends and family. And so we did it on there's a ritual that's called earning your brass, which your freshman year in the Corps cadets, there comes a point in time where you're awarded the Corps brass that you can finally wear on your uniform. And so for his outfit, they did it at this particular bell tower. And so that's where he wanted to be commissioned. And so I went and administered his oath. All of his classmates came. So there were 30 or 35 kids there. And then I had a couple of very close friends of mine who served in the Ranger Regiment, one as an enlisted guy and one as an officer, and asked them to kind of speak and give some context behind the oath of office he was taking. Because I don't think you realize it until you're a parent and it's your child that's going into the military. When you're 22 or 23 years old and you're a platoon leader, you don't understand what you've been given, and that the most valuable thing to these parents, their sons and daughters, they are entrusting to you to lead. And I don't think you truly appreciate the weight of that until you're on the other side of that and you're a parent, and now you're entrusting your son or daughter to some other 22-year-old kid potentially to lead and potentially in combat. And so I wanted a couple of my friends to kind of talk about that and what it meant to be a leader and stuff. And so it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's I'm very chilled by what you just said, because it is very real, right? I am a father of a 22-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old almost son, and it starts calling. Something starts knocking, and, every guy has either thought about it or done it. That's kind of like in our nature. And I always am an advocate to try, right? If you don't try, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And so, if you're looking for a career in the military to see if it's something for you here, just go talk to a career counselor, see if they can offer you what you want out of it.
Yeah.
Right? You can talk to them and they say, oh yeah, we can get you into school. You got to give like 2 years of yourself. But once you get back from that, and then you get discounts at Lowe's, at Home Depot. So you want to do this? It's a good idea, right? The discount part, right? That's great. It's you get it. If the recruiter would actually be telling you, you're going to get discounts afterwards and like, okay, I guess so, huh? Why not? The positive in it, man. Holy cow. So your book comes out September
3rd.
Yeah, this is going to be so awesome, and you're going to have it everywhere. It's going to be just Barnes and Noble, local mom and pop bookstores. Are you going to be doing like a tour where you can meet with these folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So I take off on my first event is the 3rd of September, I think, and it's in Minneapolis, so Vince's hometown. So funny story, his first book, nobody in publishing wanted it, and so he self-published it and sold it out of the back of his car. He would literally roll up to bookstores and say, hey, will you stock my book? And so there's a pretty famous independent bookstore in Minneapolis called Once Upon a Crime. And so Vince rolled up there and said, will you stock my book? And they're like, I don't think so, kid. And he said, I tell you what, when I make it big, I will launch every one of my book tours out of this store first. And I'm sure the owner is like, whatever, fine, we'll stock it.
Deal.
And he honored his word. And so even to this day, they start the tour there, and we're going to about 8 or 9 other cities with all these kind of great independent bookstores and stuff to do it. So it's really, really fun. It's amazing to meet his fans and friends, and I'm just very honored to do it.
I love that, actually. I love that you're going to Once Upon a Crime to honor that. And I love that he gave the kid a chance. And he said, all right, kid, your head's this big right now. Let's put your book on the shelf. And he probably went into that bookstore. He probably always was arranging it, or wherever he could do. I mean, I'll see friends' books. I'll consider you a friend. I'll see your book. I'll maybe move it, you know? Okay. At Costco, who was I interviewing? Brad Thor. He's another very, his character, right? Scott Harveth. Yeah, right. Okay.
Brad's huge.
And, I was like, Scott needs to meet Mitch, needs to meet Finn from Brandon Webb, needs to meet Jack Carr's guy, needs to meet and like have like this, hey guys, why aren't we all sitting at the same bar? And then they all go off on their own directions in their books. You know, the character he noticed looked very Navy SEAL in the bar. The character he noticed looked very CIA. Interesting, you know, just like these like cross paths, but. Again, like I've moved his book at Costco.
We do
to
that.
be in Costco, bro. Holy cow, to be in Costco.
Yeah,
that's something
really
that
neat.
That's right up your alley, right? You're one of those books we'll see in Costco.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun when you talk about moving your book. I'm on a chat group with a bunch of my fellow writer friends, and our favorite thing to do is to go into stores, see one of their books and put yours in front of it and then take a picture. And so we do that funny. All the time. Like, Taylor funny. Moore, watch this. And I'll put my book in front of his.
I need a book. Okay. Note to Rad with this pencil. Write a book to be in club to then cover other books. Next.
Absolutely.
I love that. Can I ask you an Apache helicopter question?
Yeah.
So my dad was totally into technology. We had a Commodore 64 and we played Apache Hellfire, the AH-60. So I've always known it as the AH-60 Apache, right? As this video game, very dots, very up and down. Hellfire missiles, favorite. Did you ever fire any Hellfire missiles? And I ask this because a friend of mine is, and he's like, Rad, I deploy, but I've never fired a Hellfire missile. And he's like,
yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. So not in combat, but in my first duty assignment was Korea, and it was 1999. So before 2001, when we were still doing Cold War stuff. And so there's this little island off the coast of Korea. And so you'd fly over water and just shoot Hellfires at that island. And it was so much fun. Now in Afghanistan, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2005, and we were the first longbow Apaches into Afghanistan. And the reason why that's significant is because it was a brand new helicopter that was, I don't know, about 4,000, 5,000 pounds heavier, but it had the same engines. And so it was way, way underpowered. Like in the summertime, we didn't even have power to hover. You'd bounce along the ground until you could get airborne. And so when we went into Afghanistan, we didn't take any Hellfires. We took all the Hellfire racks off. We took the radar that controls the RF Hellfires, did everything we could to save weight. And so in Afghanistan, what we used were the 30 millimeter cannon and then the rockets. And you had a bunch of different types of rockets. You had the high explosive, the flechettes, the stuff like that. Now, they have since, and to be fair, the only Hellfires we had back then were the anti-tank designed to, penetrate armor. Now they have, and those aren't really good against troops in the open and stuff like that because they're not designed to be fragment. Yeah, exactly. Now they've gone and there's this whole family of Hellfire missiles, everything from, they've got that crazy, they call it the Ninja Hellfire that just has blades that pop out of it. And then they have ones that are more
just
suited
blades.
Yeah, have you seen that one? Yeah, no. You got to Google it.
I need a poster of just the Hellfire missile exploded all out in different Hellfire.
It's crazy.
Bro, when the F-14 when Top Gun came out, there was a poster of the F-14 and it had every single weaponry that it could carry.
Yeah.
My older cousin had on his wall. We'd always stare at it. That was our internet.
Yeah, there was I can't remember who it was. One of the high value targets was killed in the last couple of years. I think they call it like the Ginsu Hellfire or something.
With the Ninja Hellfire?
Yeah. So it was designed so that you could hit a car with it and minimize collateral damage, right? So literally knives pop out, that thing goes through the roof of the car and takes care of business.
Dude, that reminds me of that movie in the 80s. Where the orb would fly through the mortuary and like stick into you with the blade. Oh my gosh, dude. I don't know if you remember that movie at all. I don't know. I can't remember. Oh my gosh. Everybody watching, comment down below what that movie's called. If I remember it during the conversation, I'll bring it up, but it was very scary. And there was like this big 7-foot tall mortician guy that would just walk to the morgue. And these kids broke in and they realized that they were in like this portal of hell. and this like sphere ball would fly around as its security, and then it had like this drill that went in your head. Knife came out. Man, the
was it Hellraisers? Was that?
No,
I can't remember.
No, I'll figure it out. Someone comment down below. Let me know I'm going off topic. It's 80s movies. We talked about 80s movies. You said, I hope that they didn't like screw up, the first version by making a second version.
Yeah.
What do you think about Red Dawn versus Red Dawn?
I think I'm a fan of the first version.
Same,
I'll just leave it at that. Like the first,
it's not because I'm old, right?
Yeah,
no.
it was so much better. It was and the Jack Carr he'll post about Red Dawn every night, and the end of that where it has the guy talking about partisan rock and the kid, that is such a great ending of the movie. But
Dude.
I remember when I grew up, there was woods behind my house, and there were many afternoons spent prepping for when
Spiders.
the communists get.
Yeah, dude.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
dude. Me too, bro. We trained to be ninjas in the backyard, and Red Dawn. So one of my friends played the mayor's son in Red Dawn.
Really?
Yeah, Darren Dalton is
the
his
guy
name.
that swallows the little
yes.
thing.
Yeah,
seriously?
C. Thomas is like, and in that scene, how he's like,
yeah.
Patrick Swayze's like, I can't do it. He can't do it. So C. Thomas Howell goes with the AK. Well, he was supposed to fall backwards. That was the whole scene. And what he did was he's like, no. I'm going to do this on Tommy. C. Thomas.
And then he like
stumbles
grabs
into
him and
grabs him. And C. Thomas Howell was not expecting that. So that whole scene right there was,
that was awesome.
Love that. Yeah. And I actually did a interview with Darren Dalton on SOFREP and,
cool.
a little while ago. And I'm trying to get Tommy. He's kind of shy. So C. Thomas. If I can get C. Thomas on, that'd be great, dude. We'll go all over that place, man. C. Thomas, come to me.
There's a lot of 80s talent in that movie. They had Patrick Swayze, Leah Thomas, or Thompson, whatever. Charlie Sheen. Yeah.
Everybody but Emilio Estevez and Kiefer Sutherland. It's like, why weren't they Wolverines, bro?
I know. They could have had the whole dream team. Yeah.
The teacher in the very beginning. Is there something I can help you with? Bro, everybody got a little bit of a part in that movie.
Yeah.
Red Dawn. Well, listen, if you get the luxury that Hollywood wants to make you into a film and you need an Uber driver that's furry to pull up, hey, where you going, spy? Let me take you. I got a couple accents. Think of this guy right here, okay?
All right. You're on, Rad. You're my first call.
Dude, that'd be awesome. I'll do you right. I'll show up and just smile. Now, listen, I've had you on here for going on an hour. You've been very pleasant and you have a great demeanor. And I just want to say that anytime that you have something you want to come and talk about, whether it's your book or current topics, you're always welcome here at the House of SOFREP. Okay. And I just want to say that on behalf of all of us. And then also, Capture or Kill, Vince Flynn, Don Bentley, the author. He's written numerous books, New York Times bestselling author. And I can't wait to see your book at an airport if I fly somewhere. I hope it's there. Okay. And I heard that now they give you like a little logo, right? If you go up to them and say, hey, I'm here to sign a book.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, oh, you know what? Hold on. Wait. Tom Clancy's here, everybody.
Yeah. They do that. And then sometimes they'll do the little author sign copy. But like I said, I don't ask anymore because I have at an airport said, hey, can I sign the books? And they look at me and they're like, no, you can't.
We don't know.
And
no,
I'm like,
you can buy some Tic Tacs.
Fair enough. So now I just like, yeah. I just run in there, sign them, and run out before they can catch me. So, yeah.
I love it, Hellfire. I love it. And
seeing it.
So awesome.
Seeing it at the airport is amazing. My final top tier is I've never just randomly seen somebody I don't know reading one of my books. So that's what I'm looking for now. Random stranger reading one of my books. That hasn't happened yet. Maybe this time.
Sit right by them. You should sit right by them when they're reading. Just be like,
hey, is that any good?
Yeah.
Flip to the back. That's a good looking author picture.
Look at that page, that author page right there, huh? You recognize that guy? Huh? You want me to sign it? Just grab it. Just start signing it. Here you go. Number one fan. To my number one fan. Here you go. Want to be in my movie? Here we go. Yeah. Call Rad. No, man, I'm going to call you Hellfire because I think that's awesome that you got to throw Hellfire missiles out. I'm going to brag to my friend that I interviewed, an actual Apache pilot that got to use Hellfire missiles.
So the last funny story about Hellfires is when you squeeze the laser trigger and then you squeeze the trigger to launch the missile, but there's a 2-second delay when you squeeze the trigger before the missile leaves the rack. And so there may have been, they tell you about it. They're like, it's going to seem like a long time. Do not double clutch that trigger. But there may have been times where you're like, oh my gosh, it's not coming. And then all of a sudden there's 2 missiles leaving the rails. So it is 2 seconds is a long time while you're waiting for that missile to go.
Yeah, because you're trying to fire it like a gun. And it's like, you know, you're feeling like I got to get this off and going. And why is it not going?
Exactly.
Fire. Right. Your mindset is
Exactly.
like, I got to get this situation. So you're like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
You're like, did I squeeze it? Did I squeeze it hard enough? Yeah. Yeah.
I bet I could fly. I just use my Commodore 64 ASDF enter space bar. It launched.
The other thing they do sometimes when you're out of practice is you have what's called a loud laser. And so if you're shooting the 30 millimeter, what you'll do a lot of times is laze first to get a distance and then shoot. And so if you get the triggers confused, you think you're pulling the laser trigger and you're like firing the laser and all of a sudden it goes, gar, 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 gar. It's because you squeezed the trigger to the 30 millimeter instead. And so you have a very loud laser. That may have happened a time or two too.
Lift, drag, rotation, laser, 30 millimeter. Right? Those are the important things. And Hellfire, 2 Mississippis. Okay. And the bag.
You got it all now. You're ready to go. They can put you in they could put you in the cockpit. You're good.
I mean, at least in a trainer, you could at least try to roll me and dunk me and let me try to get out and live. I'll try that water one where you dunk them, you know? I mean, man, was that kind of nerve-wracking?
It was awful. It was awful. You fly over water in Korea, and so they actually have a mock-up of the Apache, and they lower it into a pool, and they have a diver on either side. And so what they tell you is that if you ever get in trouble where you get confused, you're running out of air, you put both hands on your head like this, and the diver has some kind of quick release where he can pull you out of your seat. And so as it was me and my fellow platoon leaders, and so since we're the officers, we're in line to go first. And my buddy, Matt Isaacson, who just retired as a full bird colonel, he was a 160th guy and everything.
Congratulations.
He gets in there, they drop him in, and they tell you the very first time, put your hands on your head just to prove to yourself that we can pull you out. So they dunk him in there. He puts his hands on his head, and the diver goes, and he can't get him out. And so they're trying to get him out. They're pulling, they're saying, do an emergency raise. And so it's this crane. So it's barely coming out of the water. And he finally gets up and he's like, ah! And so they're like, oh, it's never happened before. Bentley, you're up next. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's never happened before, but use the crane, raise it up. It's never happened before, but we have get him up. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Dude, that's gnarly, man.
So yeah.
Because you really are getting dunked underwater and you're drowning. Holy cow.
They spin you, they blindfold you, they do all of those things because it's really useful training, but it's awful. By the time you get done, your sinuses have been flooded 8 or 10 times. Now, it's not like Bud's awful. Don't get me wrong. Like nobody's passing out and they smack you around and say, get back in the pool. But it is a little bit nerve-wracking for sure.
A little bit, dude. Holy cow. Living through all of that. And, geez, and a dad. Living through all of that too, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh. Well, praise to you and your family and your wife who, bore your kids.
Absolutely.
So
She's
shout out
lady.
to her, 100%, right? So I just want to say capture or kill. Go buy that book. Comment down below on any place that you buy it online so that the author gets some feedback in a review. So if you buy it on the main Amazons or out there on barnesandnoble.com, leave a review for the author for the book. You never know. Grab a book, read it. You may never know if he's going to sit down next to you and sign it. Okay. So please
you could
do
be
us
the
all
one.
a favor. Yeah. Make him go to the #1 New York Times. So he always comes on our show to release his next book. Okay.
Absolutely.
And movie. With me. Now, Don, I've really had you for some time and you're awesome. And again, you're always welcome back. And thank you to my listener for listening and going to the merch store right now and buying everything in the merch store. We really appreciate that. Okay. And the book club, please go check out our book club. And if there's a way that we can get Don's book in there, then we'll work that out.
Yeah,
but
that'd
book
be
club,
great.
Yeah, please, and again, you're always welcome. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for questioning yourself about your service to our country. Thank you for bringing who you brought home alive and well. And sorry for those that didn't make it that are your friends and loved ones. that I don't even know, but sorry about that. So I guess on behalf of all of us here at A Humble SOFREP, on behalf of your service, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Rad. It was awesome.
Yeah, we're a little different around here, so thanks for rolling with it, and I really appreciate it. Now, if you guys are interested any more about Capture or Kill, just start Googling it, look it up. It'll be everywhere. If you want to check out his book tour, is there a website that they can go check out your book tour? What's that?
Yeah, so just DonBentleyBooks.com. So Bentley, DonBentleyBooks.com. It's got all the info.
Okay, we'll have that broken down in a little dissertation at the bottom so people can click on that. If you're watching this on YouTube and everywhere else, thanks so much. This is the beautiful face that gets to be here with this beautiful face right here. And again, on behalf of everyone here at SOFREP, Anton, my producer, Guy, our editor, Brandon Webb, the creator and managing of everything over, I don't know how you do it, bro. And you're a pilot and an author. I don't even know. So thank you so much for having me as your host and listening and taking the time. And thanks again to Don. So on behalf of Don, I say peace.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.